Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jordan.
So if you've ever had that feeling, that the world you see, the news, the big narratives, feels a little too perfectly constructed.
A little too neat.
Exactly. Well, tonight, we're not just talking about that feeling. We have the instruction manual, the literal blueprints for how that's done.
Yeah, this is different for us. Usually when we get into perception management, it's all about theories, right? It's whispers, it's connecting dots from the past.
Right.
But tonight, we are pulling directly from the source. We're talking official government documentation, U.S. joint publications, Army field manuals, and even memoirs from the architects of modern intelligence.
We're going to expose the official playbook, the doctrine and the operational mandates for controlling, for shaping, and, for manipulating the entire information environment.
We're diving into the ultimate black file here. And this isn't some conspiracy theory document found on a weird corner of the internet.
No, this is doctrine, stuff revised and signed off on by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unmask the operators, to show you the officially documented methods, information operations, or IO, psychological operations, PSYOP, and military deception, MD.
We're going to lay out the mechanics of how these large-scale perception campaigns are built, not just by the U.S., but by foreign powers, too.
I mean, these documents, they don't just talk about information as a tool. They define reality itself as a theater of war, and information is the main weapon.
To really set the stage for how big of a deal this is, how fundamental this is to modern strategy, we have to start with a quote. It's from General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower, a foundational figure if there ever was one. He said, "It seems to me that not the least of these was the development of psychological warfare as a specific and effective weapon."
A specific and effective weapon. He didn't say it was a side project.
Not a side note, not just for morale.
No, a core instrument of war. And it's designed specifically to alter the minds of the adversary. That's its purpose.
And that weapon, that concept, has evolved. It's become the doctrine we're looking at tonight, and we are going to tear the mask off its modern face.
We've identified 4 key truths, I think, that we're going to pull directly from this documentation. 4 revelations that really underpin this whole apparatus of state-level influence.
Okay, so first, we're going to show you the definition of modern psychological operations.
Yeah.
It's chillingly clinical, and it's straight from the doctrine. Its purpose isn't just to inform, it's to deliberately influence the objective reasoning and the emotions of foreign populations.
Second, we're going to look back at the historical hidden hand. We have proof, direct proof, of foreign powers, specifically the Soviet KGB, setting up a dedicated disinformation bureau.
A whole department for it.
An entire department whose job was to manufacture fake official documents and stories. They called them succulent forgeries to mislead Western governments and their people.
Third, and this one really gets me, and we're going to unpack this paradox at the heart of the whole doctrine. How military strategy literally mandates using the truth as propaganda. We'll break down how just selecting and framing factual information is often way more effective at changing behavior than just telling an outright lie.
And finally, we get into the modern era. The total war for what they call information superiority will reveal the high-tech digital weapons, things like computer network attacks, CNA, and electronic deception, and how they all sync up with the old-school methods of deception to create this total system of reality control.
And for everyone following along with the digital dossiers, don't forget you can follow @OfficialUrbanus on X. We'll have live threads and all the source citations there.
Okay.
Let's get into it. Let's unpack the science of the operation.
Let's do it.
So we have to start at the foundation of all of this.
Right.
The intentional, planned act of shaping consciousness itself. When most people hear propaganda, I think they imagine, crude lies or obviously biased news reports.
Correct. Like old war posters or something.
Exactly. But when the military defines it, it becomes a precise behavioral science. We're talking about psychological operations, PSYOP.
And the definition is laid out right there in Joint Publication 353.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to read it word for word because it just removes any doubt about the intent behind it.
Go for it.
Okay, so PSYOP is defined as planned operations to convey selected information and indicators to foreign audiences to influence the emotions, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, and individuals.
Let's pause on that for a second. The target isn't just what they do.
No.
It's their objective reasoning, their emotions. If the military is actively deploying resources to influence how an adversary reasons, That sounds like clinical, focused cognitive warfare. That is not just dropping leaflets from a plane.
It is absolutely that. The document is crystal clear on this. The purpose is to, and I'm quoting again, induce or reinforce foreign attitudes and behavior favorable to the originator's objectives.
It's behavioral engineering.
On a massive scale. And it has to be based on this really deep understanding of the target. They talk about focusing on themes and symbols based on a thorough analysis of the audience's strengths, weaknesses, their culture, their politics.
So it's not a sledgehammer.
Not at all. It's a scalpel. It's tailored. It's precise. And what's really fascinating here is just how long this has been an accepted part of warfare. The doctrine itself says, this isn't new.
Right. They trace it back.
All the way back. American Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Think about the Battle of Bunker Hill. We're talking 1775. They were distributing leaflets to British soldiers.
What were the leaflets promising?
Free land. Just lay down your arms, defect, and you get free land in the new country. That's using information as a direct inducement to change behavior, to reduce the enemy's will to fight.
Yeah.
It's classic PSYOP.
And the way they describe the modern Psy-warrior, it sort of bridges that gap perfectly, doesn't it? From the 18th century leaflet to the 21st century info war. The source says they act more like Madison Avenue ad executives, except they wear combat fatigues and jump out of planes.
That Madison Avenue line is so, so important. It forces you to stop thinking about the old caricature of a spy in a trench coat,
Right, the cloak and dagger stuff.
And replace it with an expert marketer, a behavioral scientist. These specialists aren't just telling stories, they're developing these incredibly detailed, culturally sensitive PSYOP themes. And if they get it wrong, even slightly, they lose all credibility instantly.
They have to know the target audience better than the audience knows itself.
Precisely.
And speaking of the architects, we have to talk about the people who wrote this shadow strategy into the DNA of the U.S. government. Allen Dulles. He's often called the father of modern espionage techniques.
He was instrumental. He was the one who helped transition the wartime OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, into what became the CIA in 1947. He wasn't just an operator. He was a founding architect of the whole permanent modern intelligence state.
And this is where we find a huge red flag. Not about an operation, but about the historical record itself. In his own writing, Dulles gives us this subtle but really profound insight into how they deliberately avoided keeping records.
What did he say?
He notes that in early U.S. history, intelligence was run, and this is his phrase, out of a general's hat or a diplomat's pocket.
Wow.
He says that while this guaranteed security at the time, it made it incredibly difficult for historians to document anything later on.
So wait, you're saying this wasn't just some accident of history, like, oops, we lost the file?
That's what I'm suggesting. If the most sensitive operations were intentionally run outside of any official channels, out of a pocket, that implies a systemic, deliberate strategy of erasing history as it happens.
It means the most powerful, reality-shaping actions taken by the government might never have been officially recorded or reviewed.
Exactly. The fact that he frames it as just a problem for historians and not as a necessary security measure, that's the cover-up. It suggests the shadow government was born not just from its actions, but from intentionally leaving no trace, ensuring the full story of this manipulation could never be recovered.
Which tells you they always knew how powerful controlling the narrative was.
But here's the big paradox. This is what Colonel James Treadwell, who commanded the 4th Psychological Operations Group, revealed. They don't always need to lie. Treadwell said they operated on the principle that, quote, the truth is the best propaganda. Otherwise, you lose credibility, he explains, and the audience tunes out.
And that is the most chilling part of this whole thing.
It is.
Because if the truth is the best propaganda, it means they don't have to invent anything. All they have to do is carefully select one piece of truth, frame it perfectly, and strip it of all its context. And that truth can achieve the same behavioral objective as a lie. The real operation is the intentional withholding, the selective presentation of information. That is the ultimate form of control.
So how does that work on the ground? Let's say a country is having some kind of internal crisis, like economic instability.
Yeah.
The Public Affairs Division, the PA, their job is to report accurate, timely information. They're not supposed to try and influence or sway the audience. They're the facts department.
Right. But PSYOP is operating in that same environment, and their job is the exact opposite. Their entire purpose is to influence and sway. They're the perception management department.
And the doctrine says they have to work together, but they have these completely opposed rules of engagement.
So PSYOP can take a tiny verifiable truth. Let's say they find one minor bureaucratic error made by the opposing government, and they can amplify it. They use behavioral science, they time it perfectly, and they generate a specific emotional response in the population. Anger, fear, distrust, whatever induces the behavior they want.
So the statement itself is true, but it's still propaganda because its context and its amplification have been completely engineered for influence.
Exactly. That's the foundation of it all. The deliberate, documented use of selective information to trigger specific emotions and behaviors.
It means you have to look at every piece of public information and ask, what was the intent behind me seeing this?
Now we have to zoom out. We've talked about the tactic, PSYOP, but now we need to look at the whole architecture that governs this entire domain. Information operations, or IO.
This is the big one. This is the official doctrine for the total war for reality itself. It's the umbrella that makes everything else, all the influence, all the deception possible.
The whole goal of IO is to achieve what the military calls information superiority.
And that term is defined, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's the operational advantage derived from the ability to collect, process, and disseminate an uninterrupted flow of information while exploiting or denying an adversary's ability to do the same.
So in plain English, it means we can see everything and you can't see anything.
It's being able to operate freely while you simultaneously attack the adversary's ability to even understand what's happening around them. It's the conceptual equivalent of blinding and deafening your enemy before a single shot is fired.
And I/O is achieved by synchronizing 5 core capabilities. This is the real structure of the shadow war.
It is. You have electronic warfare, EW, computer network operations, CNO, psychological operations, PSYOP, which we just covered, military deception, MD, and finally, operations security, or OPSCs.
All 5 have to work together.
In concert, to achieve the objective.
And when you look at the language they use, the verbs, you see just how aggressive this doctrine is. The objectives for offensive I/O are written in terms of, well, here they are: destroy, disrupt, degrade, deny, deceive, exploit, and influence.
That's not passive language.
Not at all. This is the literal operational language for attacking our collective minds and our infrastructure.
Let's break those verbs down. How do you destroy or deny information on a battlefield? That's electronic warfare. You're jamming their communications so they can't send or receive data. It's CNO, computer network operations, where you attack their data centers to wipe or corrupt their files.
So I/O isn't a suggestion. It's a mandate to actively go on the attack against the adversary's stream of truth.
And if that's the scope of the attack, if you're creating that chaos and confusion, then military deception, MD, is the carefully planned lie that you insert into that gap.
Okay, so MD is the capability that's dedicated to injecting a false reality.
Precisely. It seeks to mislead adversary decision makers by manipulating their understanding of reality. The whole point is to make them believe something that is demonstrably false.
So they waste their resources, they make logistical mistakes, or they make political blunders that help you.
Exactly. And the level of planning that goes into this, it shows you how meticulous you have to be to build a convincing lie. The doctrine specifies 3 distinct ways to do it. These aren't just ideas, they're like checklist items for an operation.
Okay, what are they?
First, you have administrative means. This is all about documents. Fake orders, false treaties, giving oral statements that are misleading, phony intelligence reports, manufactured records, all designed to feed them selected information.
So you could, leak a fake treaty that shows a troop withdrawal and force the enemy to reposition their forces based on that lie.
Exactly. Second is physical means. This is where the actual physical world becomes part of the lie. This includes things like moving your forces to the wrong location on purpose.
The classic ghost army.
Right. Using dummy equipment, inflatable tanks, conducting fake logistics actions, staging training exercises, anything to present a completely false picture of your troop strength or your objective.
And a third one.
The third is technical means. This is where you use the deliberate manipulation of electromagnetic energy, spoofing their radar signals, broadcasting fake encrypted traffic, using technology to either convey false information or deny them real information.
So you're confirming that their troop movements, the documents their commanders are reading, and the signals their equipment is picking up, all of it could be part of a single, massive strategic lie.
Every part of it.
But I have to push back on this a little. If the planning for MD is that detailed, where every piece of your own infrastructure is a potential part of the lie, Doesn't that make the whole process incredibly slow, inefficient? How do you make a lie that complex believable, but also do it quickly?
That's a great question, and the doctrine actually has an answer. It all comes down to exploiting human factors.
What do you mean?
It says MD must exploit target biases. The more they know about how the target thinks, the higher the chance of success, so they don't build the lie out of thin air. They build it around what the enemy wants to believe, or what their own biases will lead them to conclude anyway.
You're building the lie on top of pre-existing psychological cracks. And I bet the doctrine also warns them about making mistakes that could give the game away.
Oh, absolutely. They're explicitly told to avoid windfalls.
Windfalls.
Situations that seem too good to be true for the enemy.
Oh.
If an opposing commander just happens to find a perfectly preserved, highly relevant operational plan lying on the side of the road, that's a red flag. It's too lucky.
The lie has to feel earned.
Exactly. It can't feel accidental. It has to be consistent, it has to be plausible, and it has to exploit the specific cultural or cognitive tendencies of that target. It's incredibly resource intensive, but if it works, it can save countless lives and win a conflict before it even really starts.
It's the ultimate chess game for reality. But, this deep dive isn't just about what our own doctrines say. The source material confirms that this kind of centralized deception is, well, it's a core function of state intelligence everywhere. And we have to look at the other side of the coin, the historical counter-conspiracy.
We have to talk about the Soviets.
Absolutely. The U.S. intelligence community had confirmed evidence of this exact kind of activity happening inside the Soviet bloc.
Yeah, the Soviets centralized their deception operations, not just under military command, but in a special department of the KGB. And it was known quite openly as the Disinformation Bureau.
I mean, the name says it all.
It really does. And the documents reveal their primary mission. Their whole reason for existing was, and I'm quoting here, formulating and distributing what purport to be official documents of the United States, Britain, and other countries.
So they weren't just spreading rumors. They were running a full-scale factory for fake reality, a print shop and distribution network.
And this wasn't just a theory or a few isolated incidents. Alan Dulles himself confirmed it. He cited 32 particularly succulent forgeries that were fabricated between 1957 and 1960 alone.
Succulent forgeries. I love that phrase.
It's perfect, isn't it? It suggests they were designed to be so juicy, so irresistible, that Western intelligence would just gobble them up without thinking.
This is the historical confirmation we need. A major world power built an entire specialized bureaucracy just to create believable fake official documents. Fake diplomatic cables, fake treaties, fake intelligence reports, all for the singular purpose of misleading Western governments and shaping public opinion.
So the big debate here is pretty clear. If both sides are running these centralized, documented operations to manufacture reality, using selective truth and plausible lies on one side and entire forgery bureaus on the other, how much of what we think of as objective reality, especially during tense geopolitical times, is actually just the product of these competing deception campaigns?
Which brings us to our truth meter segment. Let's rate the plausibility of this claim. The governments operate with the full knowledge that nearly all of their public actions, physical movements, documented statements, information control, are elements of a deception designed to control the narrative.
The evidence for the necessity of deception is, I think, conclusive. MD doctrine explicitly relies on physical, technical, and administrative lies. But the source material gives us an even deeper insight into this. It's about how deception works through shock.
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Exactly. One of the most dangerous moments of the 20th century. In his memoir, Alan Dulles notes that some of the U.S. estimators got it completely wrong when predicting what Soviet Premier Khrushchev would do.
Why?
Because they failed to consider, quote, the unexpected, the unusual, the brutal, the shocking.
So deception isn't based on logical, predictable moves between rational actors.
Not always. It relies on the ability of one side to introduce a shocking element. Dulles even connects these tactics to the theories of Ivan Pavlov, the conditioning experiment.
How does that connect?
By introducing these abrupt, unsettling changes, you can reduce the target to a state of confusion and paralysis. Think about Khrushchev banging his shoe at the UN, or when the Soviets suddenly resumed nuclear testing.
You're saying those weren't just angry outbursts?
Dulles suggests they were calculated, staged acts designed specifically for shock value, to destabilize Western predictions and make them second-guess everything.
So if the U.S. military is explicitly training its own people to anticipate and conduct the shocking and the unusual, to achieve their objectives, whether through PSYOP or MB.
Then the claim that government actions are almost always elements of a deception campaign is highly plausible.
It's basically mandated by the need to control the information environment and maximize the adversary's confusion. We're rating this claim as extremely plausible. It's a necessary part of achieving information superiority.
And that rating, which is grounded in documented necessity, brings us to the modern battlefield, the digital realm.
Right. Now we shift to the cutting edge of this conflict, the digital shadow war. This is where old-school espionage gets a vaporwave makeover in cyberspace.
And the ultimate modern weapon, the one that syncs up perfectly with deception, is computer network attack, or CNA. It's a core part of what they call computer network operations, CNO.
And the definition is pretty blunt.
It is. CNA is operations to disrupt, deny, degrade, or destroy information resident in computers and computer networks, or the computers and networks themselves.
And the document is very specific. It doesn't call this a bombing run. It calls CNA a non-kinetic strike option.
And that is the key distinction. Don't think of it as a physical bomb. Think of it as a digital EMP that fries the enemy's ability to see their own assets, to communicate, to function, and it's all done with code.
You can achieve the military objectives of destruction or denial. Take down a power grid, corrupt financial data, erase logistics plans without ever deploying kinetic force.
And crucially, it's synchronized with all the other I/O elements. So, for example, MD might stage a huge fake troop buildup on a northern border. That's the physical deception.
Right.
At the same time, CNA attacks the enemy's command and control systems in the south, degrading their ability to see or report on the real troop movements happening somewhere else. The digital attack makes the physical deception that much more convincing. You're attacking their operational spine to create a clean slate where you can insert your lie.
But this digital frontier, for all its offensive power, also creates the most dangerous vulnerability of all. And it's not an external one.
The insider threat.
The insider threat. The doctrine says it plainly. Insiders, people with legitimate access to these systems, pose one of the most serious threats. Why? Because they can access information that is normally protected against any external attack.
The logic is simple, right? Why spend months trying to hack through layers of advanced firewalls when you can just pay someone to walk through the front door using the credentials the system gave them?
And Dulles confirms this is a timeless vulnerability. It's been true for the entire history of espionage. The best way to get inside is often to recruit someone who's already there.
Can you give us a few of those classic historical examples, the ones that really show how devastating that legitimate access can be?
Absolutely. Dulles cites a few key ones. David Greenglass. He was just a low-level draftsman at Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project. But because he had that access, he got his hands on secrets about the atomic bomb.
Just a draftsman.
Or, look at the British cases. Harry Oughton and John Vassell, they were low-ranking clerks at the Admiralty. They weren't senior policymakers making big decisions, but they were in the pipeline. They handled sensitive documents every day.
And they exploited that low-level, legitimate access to steal secrets that had a massive impact on global security.
It confirms that the most heavily guarded secrets often don't fall because of some brilliant external hack. They fall because of a simple human failing that an intelligence service is able to leverage.
Which brings us to the counter-espionage loop. If everyone is deceiving everyone else, how can you possibly trust anything or anyone?
This is where counterintelligence, or CI, comes in. These are the methods designed to protect against espionage, sabotage, assassination. It requires a state of what you could call institutional paranoia.
And there's a fantastic historical example that shows just how ironic and dangerous this process can be. Colonel Alfred Redl in Vienna.
Tell us about him.
Redl was a genius. He'd developed the Austrian counter-espionage system and made it incredibly efficient. Part of his system was a very sophisticated method of postal censorship.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
He was caught by his own system.
Go away.
The Russians, who had recruited him as a spy, got careless. They started sending him large sums of money, banknotes, through the mail. And those letters were intercepted by the very postal censorship system that Redl himself had designed. It exposed his own treason.
That's the perfect vaporwave aesthetic right there. The system turns on its own architect.
And today, the goal of counterdeception is just as high stakes. The doctrine says its purpose is to negate, neutralize, diminish the effects of, or gain the advantage from a foreign deception operation.
It's a constant battle for the soul of the data itself. Our intelligence agencies have to constantly be asking, is this source legitimate, or is this what they call a phony defector?
Which the Soviets were known to use as a deliberate tactic. The goal of a phony defector wasn't always to feed you immediate lies. Sometimes it was just to plant an agent who could find out what we knew about their operations, or just to sow chaos and doubt in our entire human intelligence network.
So the very fact that the possibility of phony defectors and hostile powers trying to inject false narratives is explicitly factored into counterintelligence. It confirms that telling what's real from what's fake is practically impossible in this environment.
It makes you realize that any information stream you rely on, from a diplomatic cable to a viral story on social media, is a potential target for a calculated campaign of deception.
It's an existence defined by uncertainty, where the physical world, the digital world, and the psychological world are all weaponized to control perception and ultimately to control action.
We are living in a narrative war, and the objective isn't always to kill the enemy. Sometimes it's just to destroy their understanding of reality.
And the scope is just immense. You have MD to mislead commanders, PSYOP to influence the public, and CNA attacking the very systems that try to make sense of it all. It's synchronized, it's aggressive, and it is all mandated by doctrine.
Wow.
This has been a really critical deep dive. We're looking at the literal blueprints of reality control, pulled entirely from government doctrine and historical intelligence files. Let's just run through the bombshells one last time to really lock in these core truths.
Okay. First, PSYOP. It is openly defined and designed to influence foreign populations. It uses selected information to directly affect their emotions and their objective reasoning. The official goal is not to inform. It's to induce or reinforce foreign attitudes and behavior favorable to the originator's objectives. It's cognitive engineering, plain and simple.
Second, the pursuit of information superiority. This mandates a continuous, synchronized strategy of deception, cyber attack, and psychological operations. And it uses those explicit, aggressive operational objectives: destroy, disrupt, degrade, deny, deceive, exploit, and influence.
Third, U.S. military doctrine confirms that physical means, like dummy tanks and fake troop movements, technical means, like electronic manipulation, and administrative means, like forged documents, are all official, categorized tools of military deception. They are used to manipulate an adversary's understanding of reality by exploiting their own biases to make the lie stick.
And finally, both U.S. military doctrine and Soviet KGB practice confirm that manufacturing or manipulating reality is a core, centralized, bureaucratic function of state intelligence. We see this perfectly with the KGB's dedicated Disinformation Bureau, whose work included creating 32 confirmed succulent forgeries of official U.S. documents in just a 3-year span.
And that brings us to our final provocation, something for you to think about that we found buried deep in the doctrine. It's about operational flexibility.
Okay.
The documentation shows that if your adversary is using low-tech command and control, maybe they rely on couriers or just word of mouth, then the military is mandated to adopt equally unsophisticated I/O methods.
So they scale their deception to match the target's technology.
Exactly. So if they are prepared to deploy simple, low-tech methods of influence and deception against a low-tech enemy, we have to consider the modern implication of that.
How many simple but sophisticated digital narratives, the modern equivalent of those old Revolutionary War flyers, are already running completely unnoticed in our massive, high-tech digital information environment right now?
They don't need a complex kinetic strike to achieve their goals. Sometimes all it takes is one well-placed, plausible truth, carefully selected and amplified to exploit your objective reasoning.
We have only just scratched the surface of these documents and the systemic nature of reality control. If you want the full breakdown, all the historical context, and to see the original source files for yourself, you need to subscribe to the official urban.substack.com. That's where you'll get the complete, unfiltered deep dive.
And thread this conversation on X with the hashtag #UrbanOdysseyTruth. What's the one thing that stands out to you about this mandated architecture of deception? What vulnerabilities do you think they're exploiting right now? Reply to us at Official Banus.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of influence. Until next time, stay curious.
And question everything you think you know.